I can honestly say it was a great morning. I fed my chicken Murphy before going outside to look at my glorious property. I was honestly hoping to get all my farming done before lunch, however that did not happen. The audacity of some people. I walked right up to these two villagers and told them they had to get off my property. But you know what they said? No! Then I said, what do you mean no? And they said, we intend to move here. Well, you can't move here. This is actually my property, I did tell them. However, they were not convinced. Turns out the sign I'd put on my property a few days ago, this one right here, actually legally turned my own private property into a village. I am now the mayor of Myville, which I put up that sign as a joke because it's like, it's mine. It's not anyone else's, it's mine. And now it is everyone else's. And as mayor, I have to provide all the living provisions you would need in a village, such as housing, food. Those are the big two, but a lot of other stuff too. I didn't sign up for this. I tried to tell them this, but then they promptly laughed in my face and told me they wanted a beach house. The audacity of some people. After gathering all the materials I could possibly need, I set out to find the perfect spot to make my village. And by perfect, I mean a reasonable distance from my house. And by a reasonable distance, I mean as far as I can get this thing away from my house. I don't want this thing near my house. I found a spot. It has a few blocks of sand nearby, so that qualifies as a beach. At least it qualifies as a beach in my village, because apparently I am the mayor, so I'm gonna make the rules. And before I knew it, it was nighttime. I'd spent all day on this project and got no farming done. And by the looks of things, it could take days to get everything set up. What will my cows think of me after this? The next day had begun. As I went to feed Murphy his morning seeds, I hoped, nay, prayed that the villagers had left. Even Murphy could see the toll this was taking on me. He gave me an encouraging cluck cluck before I went outside. Maybe they were gone. Maybe the mayoral duties I had inadvertently trapped myself in had been lifted, and I could go back to my simple farm life. Now, they're definitely still there. Quite frankly, I didn't know it was possible for me to want someone to be eaten by a zombie. Construction begins. I've never claimed to be an architect, and there is a reason I am not an architect. I struggled with the foundation for much longer than I'd like to admit, but before too long I actually had my first floor completed, and then the stairway, which is usable. A minor construction setback, the villagers did threaten to sue me if I didn't add more sand to the front of their house, and so I'm adding more sand to the front of their house. This time, instead of going to bed, I worked through the night. I longed to go to sleep, however, if I didn't get this done soon, my cows would starve. Those villagers didn't offer to help at all. They just sat there in their boats while I did everything. Lucky for them, there were no zombies that night to eat their faces off. The next morning I had to get even more supplies because this house has to be big enough for 2 villagers. They insisted on me making them a 2-story house. But that wasn't even my biggest problem. When I reached the roof, I realized I had no idea how stairs worked. And of course, only the best for these guys, so I had to wait for my prized sheep, Pink Milk, to grow back its wool so I could use that for their bedding, which I almost believe took longer than making the whole house. However, this did give me a chance to spend more time in my barn, and as I suspected, my cows hate me now. The trust we built for years is gone, and I don't think we will ever recover from this. Anyway, enough about me. With these 2 beds in hand, I was able to add the finishing touches to this magnificent house. It can stand up all by itself, which is pretty impressive considering it was born yesterday. And after that, it pretty much finished itself. I'd worked so long and hard on this project, I was almost excited to show the villagers what I'd done. Hey, I finished your house. You want to paddle over there and see it? No? You want me to paddle you? I'm not paddling you over there. The audacity of some people. Look, your new house. I made this for you. I spent days working on it while you just sat there in your boats. Are you gonna continue to sit? What do you want? Eventually they agreed to at least go into the house in exchange for some funny hats. I then had my own ways of keeping them there. Now here's a warning, because this next bit of the story gets a little scary. Esmeralda's in bed because it's nighttime, but I can't find Sandy anywhere. I eventually went outside because that was the only other place I thought Sandy could be. I remember my biggest fear, was that a zombie had gotten to Sandy before I could. The next morning, I went to check on my beloved citizens. I even offered to trade with them, and they raised their prices. For me! They said their house looked too much like a garden gnome, which I don't even understand what that means. And even if I did, I feel like that would be a good thing. I tried to tell them how hard I'd worked on this house for them, but yeah, they really weren't having any of it. I will be locking my doors from now on. In a last attempt to not find a severed horse head in my bed, I went to my personal chest and took out one of my most prized possessions. I raced back to the villager's house and oh, I see it now, it does look like a gnome, and placed it right in front of their house. When they didn't immediately come outside to praise my work, I tried to find them to see what was wrong. Yeah, they just literally don't care. You guys hurt my heart, you know that, right? He knows it. I left their house, but not before they told me that they invited their friends over. More villagers were coming. I did not sign up for this.